Hello again. So I was watching HLE take on Genji, initially with the intent of keeping an eye on Grizzly and his performance as an individual, as I hadn't really seen a lot of him in the split after he came in to replace Clid after Clid's whole shenanigans. But I knew the result in advance as I had chosen to watch the LJR Academy finals live instead, where unfortunately my boys of the Three Academy lost in 5 games to the Baseball Team's Academy, but hopefully we've got lots of promising talents coming up through that, so hopefully we'll see them in the LJL soon. But as I knew the result of this game being a comfortable 3-0 for Gen G, I was looking to analyse the contest with that in mind and examine the mistakes he made alongside the rest of the team. But something else caught my eye pretty significantly and quite early on. I think HLE objectively lost all 3 drafts, but game 2 was exceptionally bad. So after losing game 1, HLE elected to remain on the red side. The total bans remained the same as well, with Rel, Renekton, Vi, Tristana, LeBlanc and Jax all being banned. The Maokai first pick out of Gen G makes sense. It's technically a flex pick, he's a strong pick, and it's just a rather dependable pick. The response of the Aatrox out of HLE also makes sense. It's 13.14, he's a strong pick on this patch, and he's just been used to 1v9 when operated by Doran, so it makes sense. Oh my god, I can't say his name without sounding weird. Oh my god. But yeah, it's just been used to 1v9 by your opponents, so you're picking it away from them. It's a strong pick for yourselves. Makes sense to get a strong power pick. They then pick up the Azir. Now, I'm not really... Azir is like a fine pick here. Like, you pick it up for comfort. It's relatively strong. But I feel like there are better power picks you can get here. You can even lock in your Sejuani instead, because we know you're going to lock that in for Grizzly, because it's his favourite support, his favourite jungler, other than Maokai. Maokai's already been picked up. He played 11 games this split. But, like, yeah, it's fine. But if you pick up the Azir, you guarantee that your solo lanes get counterpicked, or get absolutely guaranteed, which essentially dooms your jungler to either have to play more passively and only look bot lane for aggressive plays, or to have to just constantly respond and help out your lane, or it just gives your opponents matchups that they're comfortable on other power picks that maybe aren't necessarily available because you can't blind pick them. The response from Gen G to these picks was essentially perfect in my mind. They lock in the Rumble to play into the Aatrox, which makes sense as it's a strong pick for Doran and it's a counter into the Aatrox. It's a decent lane matchup for him. They then lock in the Jace. Now, I'm not necessarily a big fan of the Jace. I think Jace is being quite overplayed at the moment. He's not really putting out performances that justify how much he's getting picked, especially when Chovy was down 50 CS, despite it being technically a counter pick in this situation, and a matchup he was comfortable in this situation. Seems a bit weird how much he's being overplayed, in my opinion. But he does put out decent damage. He's a decent pick as a whole. Chovy's comfortable on it. It makes sense. The Sejuani is a response pick, and I think there's no issue with it. I mean, she's absolutely fine. Grizzly plays her a ton, and it's a response to the Maokai, which is already locked in, which is a matchup both players will have played a ton this split. On top of that, it has decent synergy with the Aatrox in terms of the way it goes in. And as I said earlier, it's one of Grizzly's most played champions. So, it sort of makes sense. I mean, he's got 11 games despite only coming in partway through the split. The second rotation of bans also made a lot of sense. We had Alistair, we had Braum, we had... I know I'm dragging this out, but we had 4 support bans in the Alistair, Braum, Rakan, and the... I can't see... Nautilus. I can't see my own notes. The Nautilus getting banned. And this makes sense because when you're talking about the next round, you've only got the bot duos to match up. You've only got the 2 bot lanes, essentially, with the supports. And the ADC matchup of Xayah Kai'Sa is guaranteed unless they're banned, which feels unnecessary given the familiarity that everyone has with those 2 champions in this current meta. HLE having the first pick in the second rotation means that they get to choose their preference in the matchup. So, for them, it makes 0 sense to ban one of them unless they really don't like playing that matchup, which you'd be pretty doomed if you don't in this meta. It kind of makes sense for Gen G if they want to avoid playing into Kai'Sa and they feel like they got a decent response to the Xayah, or the other way round. But like other than that, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to ban either. So HLE get to pick first, so they get to choose their preference. They choose the Kaiser, which makes sense given it fits their what is currently shaping up to be like a pseudo dive comp, where only really is not going in as much, but he can still follow in. He's quite good at that as well. So they've got that going on. And then, in my opinion, I also think she's a bit of a stronger champion than Xayah, but I am biased, as I've said many times before. I don't really like the Xayah. So obviously, Gen G come in and they respond with a Xayah pick, which is fine. But to fit with their comp, they now need to pair it with a champion that makes sense with their poke or peel-based comp. The best two champions for this comp, in my opinion, are banned out in the Alistar and the Braum. They didn't ban them themselves. They banned the Alistar, I think, and the Braum was banned by HLE. I've just put them in this way because it was easier. It was the order of my script, to be honest. But they're both banned out. So, personally, I would boil their chase down now to either picking an Enchanter or a tanky comp. The Enchanter is definitely the riskier choice, as it opens you up to getting destroyed by like a Blitzcrank or a Pike, or just genuinely getting squished in a well-executed dive, especially when you know that your opponents are trying to play a dive comp. But there are definitely plenty of options that would work down that route. They personally chose to go... that doesn't really make sense. They chose themselves to go down the Leona route, and I think the Leona is actually a really good pick. It's obvious that she's not an optimal pick because her Q and E are sometimes really ineffective when you're trying to peel. They basically just guarantee that you sacrifice her. But I think it's a perfectly valid pick within this draft, as it acts as a takeaway from HLE, as she would be one of their best picks. She's tanky, so she fits that bill. Decent peel. She just genuinely works quite well, especially as she is a takeaway. So the final HLE pick just annoys me. They picked up the Blitzcrank. And the reason why this annoys me is, like, there are so many, like, semi-sensible picks here. Like, you could go the Amumu, you could go the Poppy Pike, Renata. Like, there are so many there that would all be better than the Blitzcrank in this situation. Because, like, who does Blitzcrank even hook? Jace? Jace is going to be sitting deep in the back line. Or he's going to be moving around doing a ton of damage. You don't really want to hook him. The Xayah should have ult or flash and probably cleanse as well, so she's probably alright. You don't want to hook any of the other three. They're too tanky for you. Like, they're way too strong. Yeah, so it doesn't really make sense. And also, the main issue with this, the actual even bigger issue, is that, like, Blitzcrank thrives in lane matchups. But he kind of sucks here, as Leona can essentially tank whatever he wants to do, and then Xayah sort of just gets in the way of whatever you want to do. In the game itself, somehow HLE were able to get advantages in the lane phase against the odds, mostly down to their own like mechanical plays, especially the Blitzcrank, who almost justifies its existence with some creative hooks. Although overall, they ended up losing in a close game, as their team kind of got, their draft itself kind of got clapped at the end. See, I feel like it's almost hyperbolic to call this one of the worst drafts ever. It is, in terms of theory. Like, in theory, this is a horrible draft. Like, you have a mistake. Pick one is your good pick. This is a horrible pick. And then your Seju is like a middle pick. And Blitzcrank is horrible again. And then, like, Kaiser is just sort of whatever, because she's, like, current meta. But, like, the picks as a whole are kind of horrible. And I just really don't like it. So in theory, yeah, I do think this is one of the worst drafts I've seen. Especially when you compare it with, like, the other side, where, like, very strong opening pick. Very strong second pick as a counter. Weird pick, well, not very strong pick number 3, but, like, is a decent pickup, is definitely Comfort. Comfort, perfect meta pick, perfect meta response, exactly the meta response you're expecting. And then a brilliant pick 5. Like, you've got 3 optimal picks, I think. 3 optimal picks in the situation. A meta pick that is, like, guaranteed given the current state of the meta. And then a solid pick. Versus, like, an insane pick, a really good pick. A meh pick, a meh comfort pick. The current meta pick. And then 2 shit picks. Like, I genuinely think HLE got destroyed here. Anyway, this draft overall can essentially be boiled down to HLE going for vulnerable power picks. They then get countered in both solo lanes, and then tell Grizzly to jump off a bridge by locking in a Blitzcrank that guarantees him 3 bad lanes. So that was the summary. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Adios.